Hello, welcome to my introduction to needle felting. This is to give you an idea of the basic principles of needle felting so that you can go on to make all sorts of different objects, whether it's animals like the reindeer here, something like a Christmas bauble, or a Christmas tree, or a robin, depending on what you'd like to make. The basic principles are the same for all of them. So I'm going to show you the materials that we use and the equipment that you'll need, and we'll go through making a basic shape like a ball like this, and then joining shapes together and adding details. Okay, so let's get started with what you'll need. Needle felting really takes very little equipment. You'll need first and foremost a needle. You can use these individually, or if you're doing a lot of needle felting, you can actually get a needle holder that will hold multiple needles at once, which actually makes the needle felting process a little bit quicker. You'll need some wool, and this is unspun wool. Obviously, you'll need it in a range of colours depending on what it is that you're looking to make. You'll also need something that you can felt onto, and foam blocks like this one are great because you can put them on your table or your surface and felt onto these. They give you a nice firm surface to stick the needle into, and it won't end up damaging your table or going into your knee or anything like that. So a good foam block is great. And then these aren't essential, but from experience I found they're really helpful. So these are finger guards, and I'm right-handed, so I'd put one on my left index finger, like so, and one on my left thumb, like that, because I'll hold the yarn that I'm felting here and stab down this way, and actually this will then protect me from being stabbed, which it hurts. If you stab yourself in the finger with a needle felting needle, it does hurt. You can get them in silicone. You don't have to have them in leather if you'd rather not have them in leather, but they are a really good idea. Not essential, just great for protecting yourself. Now, when it comes to your yarn, one of the things that you'll need to do is you'll need to divide up your yarn, because typically you'll end up with a big bundle of it like this, which is really lovely, but you'll need to work it in smaller sections. Now, a bit like human hair, if you go to pull it, it's really quite firm. I wouldn't suggest cutting it with scissors because it actually makes it harder to felt. So what you want to do, if you need a smaller piece, is you just find the size of piece that you need, and then you just very gently tease it apart. And you see you can pull it apart this way, and then just pull it gently like that. It doesn't actually require much effort at all. It's one of those things, the more force you put into it, the more it resists. And then you can tease it apart, and it will give you a section of yarn to work with like that. Now I'm going to show you how to make a basic shape, a ball like this. This is great. So this one is going to be the body of a robin. You can make any shape really. So the reindeer here was done with a sausage shape, but the principle is exactly the same. And what you want at the end is you want really quite a firm structure. You see, it's not got a lot of give in it. It's really quite firm. So let's move on to turning this into that. The first thing that you'll need to do, once you've broken off a length of yarn the size that you're looking for, is you want to roll it up into a sausage shape. Now I am going to make a ball, so if it gets a bit wide, I'm going to fold it in on itself. It doesn't matter if you're making a ball if it starts off as a sausage shape, because actually as you come to shape it with your needle, you can squish the ends in so it becomes more and more circular. What you want to do is you want to roll it up as tightly as you can do to start off with, because it makes things a little bit easier and a little bit quicker. So I have this sort of shape, and I'm going to use these fingers to pinch it together and bring over my foam. When we're needle felting, it's always a good idea to use the needle in the same direction, and all you're going to do is just stab from the top down into your yarn. It takes a little while before this actually starts to get going, and you might be doing it for sort of 5 minutes or so and think nothing's happening. But actually every time you stab the needle in, what it does is it tangles up some of those yarns on the inside, and it helps to start sticking them together. So you stab it a bit, and then rotate it, and stab. And as I said, it will take quite a wee while to get this going to start off with. So if you're doing it for sort of a good 5 minutes or so, stab a bit, rotate it, stab and rotate, you will start to see it come together. But you have to be a little bit patient. The other advantage about going from the top down like this is that it's much easier to avoid stabbing yourself in the finger. You can obviously see your fingers, you know where you're going. Then we're going to rotate it a bit more. Where you've got these top ends here, I'm just going to fold them in, and they will eventually all get felted in as we go through. So I'm going to work on this a little bit more, and I'm going to come back to you and show you my progress shortly. So you can see here that it's starting to come together. It's not nearly so loose and fluffy as it was. It's not there yet. And what I want to start doing now is really starting to think about the shape. So I'm actually just going to roll it round in my hands and encourage a ball shape. And then carry on with the felting process. And you want to make sure that you felt a bit and then rotate it, and then felt and rotate. Depending on what shape you want to make, depends really on how much time you want to spend felting in the same place. So if I'm doing something circular, like a bauble like this, I want to keep rotating it so I don't end up with a flat spot. When I was doing the reindeer here, because it has a flattened nose just over here, I spent quite a lot of time working on here and on the underside here, which is flat. And you work this over and over again until you end up with a flattened shape. But if you're doing something that is spherical, then you want to just keep it rotated so that it doesn't end up flat spotting. So you stab and rotate. And I will come back to you when we've got a sphere. Here we go. So this has got it to the sort of shape that I was looking for. Now, as I was saying before, you know it's right when it's quite firm. It's not got lots of give in it. It's not really squishy. You might find that you look at it and you think, oh, maybe that's not quite so tidy as I would have wanted. So I don't know if you can see it on the camera here, but there's a fold line that runs just across here where I squished everything up together and all of the yarn up together. Don't worry if you have anything like this, because actually what you can do is you can take a very fine coating of your yarn and you just break off a really fine covering like that, and you can hold it over your shape and just felt a very soft covering over the top of it. Doesn't need to be felted in really hard, it just needs to be in quite robustly so it's not all coming off, and that will cover any folds and things that you have from where you've originally squished it all up together. So that's how you form your basic shape in the first place. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to join two pieces together. So I'm making a robin right now. Here's a head that I made earlier, and I want to join the head onto the body. What you need to do is you need to take yourself a finer length of unfelted yarn like this. It's a little bit of a fiddle to get going, but you want to place your two pieces together, whether they're head and body or antlers on the back of the reindeer head, anything like that. You place them together, and then you just place a strip of the yarn, the unfelted yarn, over the join, and you're going to felt around the join so that you're felting through the head and going right down into the body and felting into the body, like so. Now, if you're not sure about how big to make anything, so the head that I have here is quite small, I might decide actually, when I've got it attached to the body, that I need it to be a little bit bigger than it is. That's not a problem, because all you do is you just take smaller pieces of yarn and you lay them over and you build it up so that you can make it grow as you go. It's also a good way of changing shape if you need something to be a slightly different shape to the shape that you've got it. So we're just going to felt, as you see, through here, and when I go down into the head, I'm going all the way down into the body, like so. And this is just joining these together. I'm going to do this at the back, and then I'll work round and do it at the front as well once I've got all of this worked in. And as you see, this yarn that I've laid over the top here, as you felt it through, you don't see that this is another layer. It just becomes an integral seamless part of your robin in this case. So I'm going to come back to you when I've added this bit in and we're ready to do the front. So here you can see that's the head attached around the back, and it's still a bit wobbly, but it's definitely on. I'm going to come around the front and lay a piece over the front and do exactly the same thing again. Now, depending on what you're making, you may or may not want to see that your head is a separate piece. In the case of the robin, what I'm going to do once I've attached it is I'm actually going to come and put another section over the back here, and I'm going to make this look like it's more seamless, like one piece. But I'll come back and show you when I've done this and when we've got this all attached. So here you can see that the head and the body look much more like they're one piece now, because I've been filling in around the neck. So it's nice and firmly attached, but also it's helping that neck join just disappear around there. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make some of the smaller details. If you're doing a big ball like this, obviously you can roll it up and put it in your fingers, but if you're doing something much smaller, like for example the tail, then you're going to need to work flat onto the mat, and I'll show you how to do that now. So when you're working a smaller detail, the tail or the wings if you're doing something like a robin, or maybe horns if you're doing a reindeer or a cow or a sheep, something like that, then you want to start off with a much smaller piece. The thing to remember is that you can always build up the size of your piece by adding extra yarn. It's much harder to make it smaller and take it away once you've started felting it. So start off smaller and then you can build up from there. I'm going to take a flat piece, and I'm actually just going to work it flat onto the foam like this. Now, when you start working a flat piece onto the foam like this, what happens is it gets stuck on the foam, and that's fine. You felt a section and you pull it up and you'll pull it off and it'll be fluffy again, but the more you felt it, the less and less fluffy it will become whenever you pull it off. So you just keep stabbing it straight into the foam, working a really flat piece, and then pull it off. It sort of feels like you're undoing your hard work really when it goes all fluffy like that, but trust me, the more you work it, the more felted it becomes, the less that becomes an issue. And you keep working the piece to the size that you want. Now, if you wanted a narrower piece, I start mine off flatter like this, and then just fold it in. So I'm making a wing right now. That's quite a good shape for a wing. So I'm going to start felting it in right like that. And you can always take it off and test the piece for size against the piece that you've been working on. Now you'll notice I'm leaving one end of this unworked, and that's because this unworked yarn is going to be used to actually attach it to my robin. So this is going to be the wing here, and I'm going to use this yarn that I've not felted to fold around the robin's body and to attach it on, but I'm going to felt this a little bit more first. And I'm going to come back to you when it's ready. Now, when you're happy with the shape and the size of your wing or whatever detail it is that you're making, you hold it in place on your needle felting. So in my case, it's going to go about there, I think. Let's hold that in position there. And then you want to take your felting needle and use these loose fluffy ends to felt this in. And depending on how much you need to reposition it, sometimes it's a good idea to start this end because then there's a little bit of movement, so I can move it up and down and decide how I want to do it. Sometimes if you're attaching something really small, like the ears or the reindeer horns here, it might be easier to start actually at the base of the horn so that you know you've got it in exactly the right place and you don't need to move it again. It just depends on how much movement you want it to have. Now, I quite like my robins. I fiddle about with the wings quite a lot when I'm making the robins to work out exactly where I want them so that they have like a little shoulder. So I quite like starting at the other end, but it's entirely up to you. And then you just keep stabbing in exactly the same way as before, and it will attach your detail onto your main piece. Now, when you're doing a smaller detail, so the eyes on here, for example, all you would have to do is take a really small piece to start off with and work a small piece first. And when it comes to doing something like the whites of the eyes, you need the tiniest amount of yarn. I mean, I haven't got a white piece here right now, but if I show you, you literally want a tiny, tiny amount of yarn. So you'd start off with a corner of that. And you can always build up if you need to, but again, it's much harder to take it away. So you start off with a really small piece. When I was doing this bauble here and doing the round on the bauble, I took a very fine length of the white and just lightly, because you don't have to, when you're needle felting, you don't have to felt hard. So you don't have to insert the needle all the way in. You can actually just do it very lightly on the tip. So when I was doing the spiral here, I took a very fine piece of the white yarn and just very lightly felted it in place so that I got it as effectively as a guideline and I knew I was working it the way that I wanted to. And then when you're happy with the shape, you can build up the yarn so you can add a thicker length, but you know that you've got it where you want it to be. When it comes to doing the edges on things like this, you can just use the edge of the needle to bring in any stray fibres of yarn and then go in from the side to make sure that you're getting a nice sharp edge. And that's all there is to it. So thank you very much for watching and good luck with your needle felting. Bye!